The following podcast is a Dear Media production.
Hey, Real Stuff podcast listeners, Christina Perri here. I am so excited for you to hear the episode with me and Lucie. We're doing something super special for you on YouTube. The video is going to be my personal photos from my camera roll. So I hope you enjoy the episode and I hope you subscribe.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Real Stuff podcast. College Lucie is beside herself today because of the guest that we have on the show. Christina Perri is a singer, songwriter, activist, mother, author, all-around creative soul. You most definitely know her from her biggest hit songs, Jar of Hearts and 1,000 Years. If you were a Twilight fan like I was, or if you got married or have been a guest at a wedding anytime in the past 15 years, you know her songs, and you must also be highly anticipating today's interview. I really love every single conversation that I have on this show, but this one was special, and I do think after listening to it, you will see why. Christina is far and away the most famous guest that we've had on this show, and so you can only imagine my extreme and utter disappointment when I realized that after our recording, the recording did not actually record video. Don't ask me why. There's a setting on the back of this platform that we record on that says record video, record audio. And normally it says both of those things. Unfortunately, during this interview, it just said show video, record audio. So Christina and I could see each other. We both thought it was recording. And unfortunately, it only recorded the audio. Listen, I know this is a podcast, so the audio is the most important, but we do really pride ourselves on having this show available on YouTube to watch if people want to watch it as a video version. And so as soon as I discovered that this happened, I was pretty devastated and realized I need to come up with a way for the YouTube version of this to be super cool. I ended up reaching out to Christina, telling her about this mishap, thought it would be really awesome if she would maybe be open to sending me a few photos from her camera roll that we could use throughout the interview on YouTube so that some photos of her life could pop up in conjunction with what she's talking about, because she really takes us back, her whole history of her rise to fame in the music industry and her whole life. I really didn't want to be too pushy, so I just asked her, if you could send me a few photos, here's a short list of some key things that I think would be great to see from your camera roll just to make it cool for our YouTube viewers. And you guys, Christina went above and beyond, and she sent me a Dropbox link that had 331 photos from her camera roll and her private life, many of which she has never shared anywhere before, and you're about to see them in this YouTube version. So if you're listening on Apple or Spotify and you much prefer audio versions, by all means, stay right where you are. But if you do want kind of a cool new viewing experience, head over to YouTube, and instead of a standard podcast where you just see two people sitting in their living rooms talking to each other, this YouTube video is full of private photos, videos, and old content from Christina's camera roll dating all the way back to her childhood, photos of her grandparents, all the way to today. I'm so grateful to her for taking all the time to send us those photos. It honestly has been a little bit of a blessing in disguise because the two of us have been going back and forth and working side by side to put this episode together. And it's really brought us a lot closer together as people. We've now spoken a whole lot. We are on each other's close friends lists on Instagram. I'm kind of not mad about the fact that this happened now because I got to make a really cool friend in the process. So let's dive in with Christina Perri. Christina Perri, welcome to The Real Stuff. How are you feeling today?
I'm good. I'm really good. I actually had a nap this morning. As a mom, I'm sure you know how valuable that is. Like, am I back to life? Like, I feel like maybe I haven't slept for a couple weeks. I'm not sure, but that nap just like I'm here.
Revived you.
Yeah, I'm all here. Yeah. I mean, I go to bed early anyway. Like, I feel like I'm just a zombie at the end of the day. Like, my husband and I laugh about this all the time because he wants to hang out. And I'm like, if you come near me or touch me or talk to me, like, I'm going to explode. Like, I just want to sit on my phone and do my Wordle. Like, please.
Wordle. Wow, you're still doing Wordle.
Yeah, I do them all. I do the Wordle, the connections, the strands, and then the mini. And it's like my routine. And then like sometimes I can't get to till the very end of the day. And I'm like, everyone leave me alone.
Free time, Wordle time.
I sound so cool in this already. I'm like, I took a nap. I play Wordle. I'm actually 70.
Well, we love to hear it. We love to hear that you're taking care of you, getting in your me time. I want to go back here. I want to take us back to I believe 2007.
Okay.
You were turning 21. You moved to LA to pursue a career in music. Can you just take us back to that time in your life? If you want to go any earlier, feel free. But I would love to hear about your upbringing, your interest in music, and how you ultimately made the decision that LA was the spot.
So let's see. I have to sort of credit 2007 when I moved to LA. I remember my brother asked me to. And like, so I have like a really great relationship with my older brother. And my whole life, I feel like a common theme is that like anything he did, I wanted to do. Anything, like all his friends, I wanted to date. Whatever high school he went to, I went to the girls' one. That like he went to the all boys school, I went to the all girls school, so I could do the same plays as him. Like he's like my North Star, like
Hmm.
my whole life. And we're still super tight. But back in 2007, he was like, I'm moving to LA. And he had been in the music business. I have to say, he got a record deal when he was like 16 from Clive Davis. Like it was kind of an amazing thing that happened to him when he was really young. But him and his band were from Philly. They're called Silvertide. They were like 17 with like a record deal touring the world with like Motley Crue and all these like gigantic Van Halen, all these like huge bands. And they pretty much fell apart and lost everything because they were 17-year-old boys who like didn't know what to do. And so my brother was like, well, I'm not gonna let this stop me because he's a really talented guitar player. And so he was like, I'm gonna go to LA. So I think I have to credit him that I didn't even know that was a thing. Like I was like, living in Philadelphia, this little girl. I did love musical theater. I did love writing poetry and sitting under trees and crying and being really emo. Like I was like, my favorite thing to do at like age 10 was to sing Mariah Carey in my bathroom and just cry in the bathroom and in the mirror.
Yep.
And like, I don't know who I was crying over exactly. I was only 10. Like falling in love was my favorite thing in the whole world. And I remember mourning the loss of all these loves I never had. And so I was so emo back when I didn't know what that word even was. Like, thank
Yep.
God I didn't have Instagram then. I would have been the girl with like the one single tear in the
Yes.
dark,
With the
like
choker.
totally. And I'd probably, I mean, I don't know if I regret anything, but it would just be rough to be able to go back and see all that. This was like the early 2000s of being just really emotional, but I was writing songs. So like that was the one thing I did do. I taught myself how to play guitar. I taught myself how to play piano by ear. I still don't read music. I don't know what I'm playing a lot of times. It frustrates my band very much when I'm like, I'm playing this. But I like was so dramatic that like I knew I needed something. Like I needed to get this stuff out, which I think like is really beautiful now that I'm a mom and I see my kids like what's their thing gonna be? Like I feel like everyone should have a thing that really like helps them that isn't drugs and alcohol, because like I got
Yep.
to do that later. But like when I was 12, 13, 14, like that's what really helped me survive was like writing poetry, writing songs, listening to the Beatles. Like that was like my sort of my
Mm.
identity. And I feel like it all led to my brother moving to LA. And I was like, well, I'm coming. So that was like a really easy decision. That was probably the best decision I ever made. I got to LA on my 21st birthday. I remember I worked at a restaurant in Philly where all the women pulled their tips and like gave me like $3,000 to like go chase my dream. Like I was like,
That's so sweet.
that was so sweet. I was like moving to LA with my big dream. I mean, I had seen Coyote Ugly. Like I like knew like I was like going on a quest, and the
Yep.
quest was like LA. And what's funny is my brother wasn't even there. So he had gotten a job and he was like, you can just stay in my apartment, but I'm on tour. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I didn't know anyone in LA. So I didn't come like with one friend. And I just had my brother's apartment, which was like all black, like satin black sheets with like dark black curtains. Like he was so kind of like metal. And I was like, not that vibe. And then, but I was like in his like dungeon in by the Grove is where I first moved. And so I don't know, there's something about like just doing that and like making that decision and force in your own life and your own story that like I'm joking about it, but it was so powerful. I did the scariest thing I could do. Like I left my parents, my friends, my boyfriend at the time, who happened to be Jar of Hearts, which is so funny because we got back together like 1,000 times. So I'm really glad I left him too because he was like so toxic. And yeah, we were still talking. We were like, is this gonna work? Is it not? So this was like before the like final you don't get to get me back moment.
Yes.
Um,
The iconic moment. Oh, that bridge. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. I
Yeah.
meant every word. So yeah, I think that was like when you really like shake up your life and like you make a decision and then the universe sort of like supports you when you do that super scary thing to chase your dream or to like get out of your hometown. I feel like a lot of people just even have to do that to like break the cycle for either whether for your family, for your town, for like what your future is going to be. Like if you're dreaming big, like the way to do it is to like go to where the dream is. And so yeah, I did it. I was terrified. I cried every day when I got to LA. I remember because my brother's next door neighbor across the hall was an apartment building, and he just kept knocking on the door like, "Are you okay in there?" Because my brother told him to like check on me, and I'm like crying. I'm like, I'm fine. I was really scared. I went and I got a job because my brother was like, you have like 3 weeks to make money before you have to get your own apartment. So I got a job at this like super fancy restaurant in LA called Chocolat, which I made a ton of money illegally doing these like poker games, these like Russian poker games. It was
Huh.
so shady and like, but I was like, whatever. I made a bunch of cash.
On that note, I want to hear about your family's background with money. When you were growing up, what was your family's financial situation like, and how did that translate to LA being on your own?
Sure. Okay. Well, we had, it's so funny as a kid, you like don't know. Like I thought we had everything. Looking back now, like we really didn't have much. My mom's a hairdresser, my dad's a barber. My dad's from Italy. My parents worked every day. My grandma would like watch my brother and I. Like we were so middle class when there was a middle class. I think like this was like it's not like that very much anymore, but like we would go on vacation once a year. We had like the things that we needed, but like if I wanted a cell phone or a starter jacket or like any of these things like in the 90s or or 2000s, like I had to work to buy it. Like I was a babysitter. I learned to work for money like very early on. I worked at a restaurant starting at 16. And so like I just knew I had to work to make the money that I wanted to spend. Like my parents never gave my brother and I money just for fun. Like we really just had what we needed, like food and a house and some stuff. And then as I got older, I was just such a hustler because of that. I worked so hard when I was in LA. So I started with that fancy restaurant and then I ended up having 3 restaurant jobs at one point. Like I was like in order to pay my rent because rent in LA was so expensive. I used to make $1,880 every month. And then I pay my bills that were that much money. And then I had like an extra $20 to go get a waffle brownie sundae from the 101 Cafe. Like,
Mm.
so even into my 20s, so now I'm 21, 22, 23. I remember one time I had to get my car, like an oil change, and like I had to call my mom and ask for help because I couldn't afford it. It wasn't in my budget. Like I really was living paycheck to paycheck. And I think my parents were too. Like, I mean, they didn't have paychecks because they were self-employed, but they were living haircut to haircut.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what my upbringing looked like. It wasn't about money because we didn't really have it, but we didn't go without either. So my parents did a great job of not making anything about that, but teaching us the value, I think, of working hard. And like, if you want something, you got to work for it.
When you got any sort of money in this time period in your early 20s in LA, did you have any lens around, I should probably be saving some of this, or let me start, dare I say, investing at that stage? Or was it really just, I'm going to pay my bills and then I'm spending the rest on this brownie sundae?
Yes, it was definitely that, but I mean, like, if I'm being honest, the day I got my record deal, like the day that I was with my best friend Kelty, and we were at sushi, and she had bought my lunch for 10 years of our friendship. Like I'd never paid for our lunch ever, and then it was like ching, and like my record deal like hit my bank account, and I was like, I'm gonna buy you lunch for the rest of our lives, and I thought it was like I was so rich, like, but like that's crazy to like a 23-year-old to then to go from I think I had $4.96 in my bank account to like hundreds of thousands because that's what they give you as an advance. Like it's not,
Right.
I just like that was mine. I had to pay it all back, but still, it was like what? And then like I immediately bought laser hair removal. That was the first thing I bought. So
I'm currently undergoing that right now. This is a very topical moment for me. It's the best, isn't it? What a great investment.
oh, for sure. And to be fair, though, I had to do it like 4 or 5 times because I'm so Italian. So, but it was the first time I did it. And like, so people are always like, what was the first thing you bought? And I'm like, Mini Cooper. Lies. I bought laser hair removal
User
on
hair.
my whole face because I was like so insecure from like the 4th grade having a mustache. So I kind of went a little crazy when I when I got a record deal. But at the same time, I didn't, because I didn't buy like diamonds and like all these things. Like I remember thinking like, oh my God, this keyboard that I just bought would take me like 2 weeks at a restaurant to buy this. So like I did have that in my mind. I think I was like, I don't know, I guess I didn't ruin it all because here I am. But like I had fun, but I also was a bit conservative just from growing up without money. Like I never knew how to be frivolous with it.
I want to go to that moment and I guess that year. It's 2009. You said you have this. I know that in your early days in LA, you actually got married and then divorced rather quickly, correct?
I did. I was on ecstasy. I got married in Florida. I don't remember much about it. We were married for a year and a half. I definitely need to write a book because sometimes I like forget
Yeah.
this was all. I've lived so many lives.
Sorry, you were on ecstasy when you got married or the whole year you were on ecstasy?
It's pretty vague. I would say I met this guy. I was working at that restaurant. I met this guy 4 days into living into LA. 4 months later, we got married.
Was he a lot older?
Yes, he was 30. Like, what the
I got
heck?
I got those vibes.
Yeah, I was so mad at him when I like got sober and like came to and was like, what the heck? Like he wasn't creepy. He didn't have creepy vibes at all. He was so sweet. But at the same time, I was like, dude, why did you let but then again, he got sober after I did. So I was like, oh, we were both alcoholics. Like that makes sense to me that he wasn't like he didn't notice his bad decision making, just like I didn't, because I was like I was off the rails. And
Was
so
he pursuing a career in the music industry as well?
no, he was a producer. He made like commercials, music videos. He like had his own thing. And then I
Okay.
did that for a while. I was a producer of music videos like for so long that like when I started making music videos, people started working on my music videos that I had produced and they were like, "Wait, weren't you the producer of that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was 21." Like, "What?" Like I have it's just so wild. Like some people remember me as like
A great full circle moment.
yeah, and then I got to be the artist. But yeah, I always forget that happened. We were married for a year and a half and then I got sober. That's sort of the story is like I got sober and woke up and was like, "Oh my God, like we should not be married." Like it wasn't even that bad. It was just like it was messy and we weren't happy and I was only 22 at the time. And so I was like, "Let's just undo this." And we did. And so I call it my starter marriage. I feel like a lot of people now they have them.
And then you go back to your childhood home. You got this ex-boyfriend that's trying to get you back.
Yes, that's exactly right.
I heard you were sitting in your bedroom trying to pretend you weren't home.
Yeah.
What was he
Yeah.
like, throwing rocks at the window or something?
I mean, honestly, sort of. It was like everyone told him I was in town. Like it was like it was hard to hide. It was Christmas, so like everyone knew I was there. He was calling, texting. He didn't. Maybe he did just show up. And my mom loved him, so my mom's like, "Oh, come on in." Like I think he did show up looking for me. Like it was exactly what the song is. It was like my response to a specific experience I was having in my life where like I finally didn't want to be with him. Like it's such a powerful moment in like all I want to say women, but probably men too, like where you're in this toxic relationship and you just keep going back. They call, you answer, they ask you out, you go, and then you regret it. And you're like, why did I
Yeah.
do that? And like I did that back and forth with him for like 7 years. And so this was finally the first time when I said no, I meant it. Like it wasn't faking it till I make it. I was like, no, I'm done. I don't want
No,
this.
I can't take one more step towards you. 'Cause all that's waiting is regret. Who do you think you are, motherfucker?
Right? I mean, I should have put motherfucker in there because that will work so well.
Why was this guy so toxic? Give us the details.
Well, he cheated on me. So when I was 17, he was on tour. He was in a band. He was like, and he was way older than me. I guess I had a habit there. 8 years older than me, and he was the singer of a rock band. He was like, grungy, whatever. I guess he went on tour and he had a girlfriend at the same time as having me as a girlfriend because I went to visit him on tour and someone called me by the wrong name. And then that's when I realized I was like, wait, who's Rachel? Like I
Oh,
still remember this
no.
so clearly. And they were like, I mean Christina. And I was like, so I was 17 and I was heartbroken. I remember my dad like kind of like picking me up. I was crying and he like held me. Like I was like, it was like my
Aw.
biggest heartbreak moment. What's so fascinating is then I don't know like why. I think I got back with him later when I was like turning 18. I was starting college and he was like, I'm so sorry I made such a big mistake. And then I was like, I think in my mind I was like, great, I'm going to cheat on you now. And so then I did. So then I got back with him just to cheat on him. And it never made me feel better though. Like no amount of people that I had like cheated on him with actually made any of my heartbreak feel better. And And then he was in for the toxic back and forth too. Like, so we did that really for a while, from when I was like 17 to 21.
And then you're back in your room and you hear he's asking all around if you are anywhere to be found.
Yep. And I was like,
And
who
you
do
were
you think
hiding.
you are? Yeah. And so I wrote Jar of Hearts, and then I fully was done. I actually went down in the kitchen. I played it for my mom. This is funny because she was like, I was like, hey, mom, listen to this. Because everyone's like, did you know that was the best song you'd ever written? I'm like, no, I wrote songs every day, like every day. I had it in like my pocket, like all my other ones. But I like specifically played it for my mom. And I was like, hey, mom, I just wrote this. And she was like, that's nice, honey. Like literally nothing, like no reaction whatsoever. And so I was like, okay. So the amazing part of this story is that like I had written all these songs, and I did go back to LA because there was a moment again in my story where like my mom and dad were like, can you just stay in Philly? Like you're home, like you have no money. You are still a waitress. You were married. Now you're not. You're an absolute mess. Like, can you just stay home? And I was like, yeah, I probably could. But like, I kind of feel like I didn't try hard enough. Like I went to LA and I like became a waitress and I got married and I was drunk every day. Like I didn't give LA a good chance. Like, and so my parents were like, ugh, I don't know. We don't support you going back. And I was like, okay, well, if I get a job, will you let me go back to LA? And they said, sure. So literally the guy, this is wild because this all feels like woo woo, the magic Disney movie part of my life. The manager of that first restaurant I worked at, a Chocolat, he called me when I was in Philly and on that trip, and he was like, hey, can you manage a coffee shop for me? And I was like, yes. Like that was my ticket. I was like,
Yep.
oh my God, mom, dad, I got a job. I'm managing a thing. I'm going to be making more money. Like I'll play shows at night. Like I have a job. And it's the guy who, we know, I've known him for a couple of years. Like, so they were like, okay. And so like I went back to LA January of 2010, which me and Kelty, my best friend, called the 10. And she moved to LA with me. And so that she was like, I'm going to manage you. And she was like my fairy godmother and didn't really manage me and didn't book any shows. And my career didn't move forward at all at the time. But she came back in the story later as my fairy godmother and was like responsible for Jar of Hearts getting on So You Think You Can Dance. But I went back to LA. I did the scary thing again. I was totally like vulnerable. I was like, and then that's when I had 3 jobs because it was like my rent was so high. And I'm so glad that I did that. Like that journey back to LA felt like the most important thing because so many people move out of LA when their dream doesn't come true. And I was like, wait, I actually didn't try. I need a redo. And then that was my big moment.
In the music industry, what would it look like to be trying?
At the time it was MySpace. So this is pre-Spotify, pre-Instagram. So I had a MySpace with 3 songs on it. Nobody listened to them. I started a YouTube channel where I played covers. And so what's funny is no one watched those either. Like I was not a YouTube sensation. Like some people at that time were starting to get discovered on YouTube or American Idol.
Like Justin Bieber?
Yeah, exactly. So there was like all of a sudden there were these things that could happen to you. But what happened to me had not happened to anyone yet. So You Think You Can Dance played a minute and a half of my song on June 30th.
So wait, what happened with that? Kelty gave the song, said this is my friend's song, and passed it along to the choreographer?
So Stacey Tukey happened to grow up in Canada with Kelty. They had the same dance school. It was Stacey's mom was Kelty's teacher. Like
Stacey's mom.
yeah, Stacey's mom. And so Kelty heard Jar of Hearts, and I was like, dude, you can't, because I had recorded a demo of it. So I finally was like doing stuff. But not really, like just for me. And I was like, Kelty, listen to this, but like don't show anyone. And she was like, okay, I won't. And then she just immediately emailed it to Stacey Tukey and said, hey, this song would be perfect on your show, because Stacey at the time was like the emo, playing all like the super singer-songwritery like ballads. And so Kelty was like, this would be so good on your show. And she said, one day maybe you can play it. And Stacey was like, I'm obsessed with this song. How about Wednesday? So that was June 30th, 2010. I had no record label. I had no managers. I was just a waitress. Like all that was true. Like I just literally was like, here's my song. I knew a guy who wanted to be my manager. So he knew a guy at iTunes who put the song like on the brick. Do you remember on iTunes when there was like one image and the image would change?
Yes.
And so like that was a big deal to get on that, like, and it was called the brick. And so like he knew someone there and like they decided to put it on the brick. Like everything felt like, again, it was magic. It was a bit
When
of that.
you found out that this was going to be airing on Wednesday on So You Think You Can Dance,
Yeah.
do you remember calling your family saying, turn on the TV, my song's going to be on? Did you call everyone you know? And were you sitting there watching it live?
Yes. No, I went to the show with Kelty. So I found out on a Friday. I called everyone I know and I was like, oh my God, my song's going to be on TV on Wednesday. Then I had the weekend to like prep it. I needed a photo shoot. Like, so that photo of me like holding a red jar is like a friend of mine just took a picture of me because I was like, I don't have any pictures. Like, I was like, I'm an artist now. So what's funny too is like I didn't know if I was going to be the artist because I also loved writing songs but didn't love performing, which is why I didn't play shows, which did not help me out at all when this all happened because I had no experience. But anyway, everything kind of lined up and ready for So You Think You Can Dance on that Wednesday. And then me and Kelty went to the show. Stacey invited us. We were sitting in the back row of the bleachers at CBS Studios, and they took our phones. And so we're sitting there. And I do very much remember this visceral moment of like sitting there and hearing it happen live, like watching it. And like Kelty is like sobbing. And I was just like, whoa, because I'd never heard my voice so loud. Like I'd never heard my voice on a recording with like 3-part harmony that loud, And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is so cool. And I was just like, okay, bye. And I thought I'd like go back and go waitress the next day. And what happened was like the song went on iTunes up the whole chart. It went up to number 1. It was like every record label was like, who's this girl? Benny Blanco's mom called Benny Blanco and said, you got to sign this girl. Benny called his friend Andrew Luffman from Atlantic Records and was like, you got to call this girl. And so what's funny is I've called Benny Blanco's mom and thanked her because I wonder if like she's the reason. It was just this huge moment in time that this had not happened for people this exact way. And it went what I would call viral, even though that wasn't really happening a bunch. And then I flew to New York City. I signed a record deal with Atlantic Records. I quit my job as a waitress, but because like I'm so nice, I like covered all my shifts until like they replaced me, even though like in the movie I'd be like, see ya, and get in my limo and drive off. Like, I hit the big time. I became a recording artist overnight. It was literally that fast. And then I don't know.
I mean, what a start. Truly, what a start. First and foremost, do you remember the exact monetary amount that hit your bank account from that advance, from the record deal?
I want to say it was like $500,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you bought lunch for your friend and then got your laser hair removal.
Laser hair removal. And then I got a black Mini Cooper because I had a white one. And then I traded it in and got a black one.
So much about becoming an overnight sensation, whether it's a singer or a YouTuber or whatever, kind of fucks with your head.
Mm-hmm.
It must.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
especially you go through your whole life thinking of yourself in one way, and now all of a sudden there's obviously praise and positive stuff coming out of it, but I'm sure also criticism and stuff you've never subject yourself to before. What is it like when a song comes out that you had been working on and maybe didn't even give that much thought to, but you just put the song out, it gets on this TV show, and all of a sudden you start seeing the music industry at large is now commenting on it. 2 out of 5 stars, 3 out of 5 stars from Billboard, Rolling Stone. How do you square away the work you've done with the reception and the self-image that creates?
Dude, that's such a great question that most people don't even have like, a perspective into that. So it was so hard. It was like the only thing that saved me was how fast it was going. So I think if I had stopped, so I think back to 2010, and that's why like I have all these markers, like I have dates like June 30th, and then like July 6th, I played the CBS morning show. It was my first time I ever played the song ever, and it was live on TV for 30 million people. Who do you think you are? Running around leaving scars, collecting your jar of hearts, and tearing love apart. You're gonna catch a cold from the ice inside your soul. So don't come back for me. Don't come back at all. What I was doing was no longer in the realm of normal life. And so I was like catapulted to like kind of another realm where it was like a whirlwind, like literally they say that, but it was because every single day I was working for about a year and a half. I didn't stop. Like the train never stopped moving. So I didn't have the time necessarily or the bandwidth to look back and analyze like what was exactly happening to me because yes, all of a sudden everyone cares about my tooth. They're like, wow, look at this girl's crooked teeth. And I'm like, my teeth are crooked? You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden, like I'm being judged physically. Then I'm being judged like, yes, the song, like, oh, this is the worst song ever. And people are doing parodies, jar of farts. And I'm like, what the
Oh
heck?
God.
Like, I didn't ask for this. Like now all of a sudden I'm on all these blogs. I'm reading like, you know, if I Google myself, like everyone has a comment or an opinion on my hair and my outfit and my body and my, you know, all that stuff was so fast and people were so mean. This was the beginning of like online bullying and you know what I mean? Like this was not, it was like just starting and I have to say like it was nothing like too bad because I didn't like I was so doe-eyed and bright and like my story was so sort of positive that like it could have been worse, I should say. Like there was nothing really negative that was happening, you know, everyone was sort of like everyone loves a hero story or like an underdog. So I was the underdog and people were rooting for me. And I think overall the sense was positive. But all of a sudden now I'm being watched and judged and my family and friends are treating me different. Let's talk about
Mm.
that. There's something I'll never, ever, ever forget. Someone said to me, fame doesn't happen to you. It happens to everyone around you. And I was like, what do you mean? Like I didn't get it. And then one day I understood it because I had not changed. I was still the waitress. I could still make you a mean latte or I could sing you a song. But like, so that's why I didn't understand why everyone was treating me different because I didn't feel like I had changed. And then every kid I ever went to school with was hitting me up every, you know, like my mom's like, I need 45 signed pictures of you. I'm like, why? You're my mom. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, she was making cute little charity things, but still, I was like, I didn't like it. I did not
Mm.
like that feeling of like, why is everyone treating me different? So, all that to say, I built it all up for about a year and a half. And then the truth is, I drank. So, I was sober that whole time because I got sober when I, you know, was married and broke up with that guy. And I will say, I think my career all happened because I was sober and I was clear and I was bright and I was like, you know, in my body and I was in my true self. But then I remember the day my album came out. It was May 2011. So if this is June, so it's about a year. Everyone went home. I went to my home that I had never even been in this like big house that I had rented with like no furniture and I drank by myself. And I know exactly why I did. Like that was the moment I had off. They were like, "Okay, take a break. You just worked for a year." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I like drank and I lost my sobriety. And I remember like that. I think says it all. Like so, I didn't have a reaction right away to all that. I like pushed it down and pushed it down and pushed it down. But like that May of 2011, I remember just like it was too much for me. Like all of it kind of came crashing down on me because I finally stopped the train. And I was like, oh my God, this feels so uncomfortable. All of it was uncomfortable. So I ended up drinking. Actually, it took me a year to get sober. I got sober March 1st, 2012. So it took me one whole year to get back. And the toll it took on me, like I don't talk about it often, but it really did. I'm a sensitive, emo, you know, existential little girl. And I just was like, I was so affected. I was so affected by everyone's words, everyone's opinions. And I pretended I wasn't until I absolutely was.
I want to go further on what we were just talking about, but congratulations on what is it now? Almost 15 years of
Well,
sobriety?
13, yes, March 1st, 2012. So I just hit 13.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Incredible. So, are you telling me that when a person who comes from a modest monetary background gets $500,000 in their bank account and all of a sudden blows up and gets respect and fame and somewhat of a luxury lifestyle, that it doesn't actually change the way they think about themselves?
1000%. Yes.
Would you say that there were moments of self doubt or moments of imposter syndrome of how is this happening to me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I honestly thought all the time that it's not supposed to be me. Like that phrase, it's not supposed to be me. Like this was just a fluke. The fact that I was singing Jar of Hearts on that demo and not someone else, like it should have been someone else because I don't like to perform. I do like writing songs. That I always identified as a songwriter. And so that part felt great. That was the only part that kept me going was that I was being celebrated for a craft that I actually do really love. I did not like being celebrated for being a performer, for being a celebrity, for being all those things. That felt like imposter syndrome because I just felt like it's not supposed to be me. I don't know how to do this. Like I felt like I was not doing a good job at that. And I will say I felt that way all the way until June of 2011. So one whole year where I was like, no way, this is just, I'm going to be a one hit wonder. This is like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. And then I wrote 1,000 Years for Twilight. And I was like, okay, it's supposed to be me. Like if that hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't be here today for many reasons. One is I would have been a one hit wonder, but the fact that 1,000 Years came through me again, and I was like, oh, I identified so much as the writer of that song, and like it felt like I earned it, I deserved it. I loved the movies, the books, the like. All of a sudden, I felt part of the narrative instead of some distant, like a genie had popped down and I'm Aladdin. Do you know what I mean? Like I felt
Yeah.
like Aladdin until then. And then I was like, okay, it is supposed to be me. And then I felt more comfortable in my skin, more comfortable on stage. Maybe it just took me a year to figure it out. But like I really felt like I settled into my career when that happened. And I was like, okay, I can do this.
I always wonder if singers who have a really good voice, as you do,
Thank you.
if they are super hard on themselves and listen to their own tracks and think this isn't good or I don't even like this. And I'm so curious how you felt sitting in that audience, listening to your voice louder than you ever heard, and then being
Yeah.
thrust into Atlantic Records and continuing to write and sing. And now it's clear you're not just going to be behind the scenes writing songs, but you are the performer.
Yeah.
Do you like your voice?
It's so funny you say that. The first couple years, no, absolutely not. I was like, "You're joking that you guys picked me." Like like, that's the imposter syndrome. I was like, I'm not like Tori Kelly. I can't like the way I sing is so specifically me, which I guess now does make room for me at the table because it is unique in a way. And maybe, looking back, I know that now. But like I don't sing like really good singers. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I sing like me, and when I was singing Jar of Hearts, like it's so low. Like, do I think I'm Barry White? Like I'm like you should hear like all the girls on YouTube that would cover Jar of Hearts. It cracked me up. The first line of that song every single time is too low for every girl. Like
It
every
is a
girl,
low line.
yeah, it's like I know I can take, and like I don't know, I can do it, but like most people can't. And so I was like learning my voice in real time in front of people. So then I'm like writing my first album, and then I'm performing, and then all of a sudden pop songs are like way too high. Like I don't know if you remember, like everyone's singing like way 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 too high because you can with autotune. So then I'm writing songs like Human, which is like how do I even sing that live on stage because I'm not breathing. Like they took out all my breaths in the editing, and I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
how does a human sing human? Like I can't even do it. And so I went through a phase of this pop music. Like I feel like 1,000 Years is the probably truest to how I like to sing. And then what's funny now is if we fast forward all the way to now, like I'm singing lullabies, and feels like I feel like it's my sweet spot. Like I feel like I'm not Barry White, I'm Dean Martin. Like I
Mm.
wanted so badly to be like a crooner and not so much a pop star. And so what's been really cool for me is getting to like have this part of my career where I'm singing really soft and really like it's more enjoyable for me to actually sing. So as a singer, it's stressful to sing pop songs versus like now it's really enjoyable to sing lullabies and like soft, stuff. But people are very much over me singing to babies too, and they want me to come back and do the other thing. But either way, I'm glad I get to do both. But I did not like my voice that loud, that hard, that I was like, I mean, I sang like musical theater growing up. So I was like, that this isn't that. Like it was kind of rough. I was very critical of myself probably my whole career.
Well, it is amazing how a song like 1,000 Years can translate so seamlessly from being a love story and a wedding song, as
Yeah.
many people in my generation have used it for,
Thank you.
to being a lullaby and about parenting. And let's move the conversation over towards motherhood now, because your life has changed drastically since your start in the music industry. Hey guys, it's Lucie here. I'm just popping in at this point in the interview with a trigger warning that our topic of conversation is about to take a turn as we dive into some experiences that Christina's been through with pregnancy loss. These are very heavy topics up ahead. I'm so grateful Christina opened up about them. And I realized as I was going back to this episode that we kind of just dove into her emotions around what happened without actually calling out the words of what happened. So if you're unfamiliar with her story, this interview might be a little confusing. So what I'm about to share here isn't something that she shared with me in confidence. This is public information she's spoken about many times on her platforms and other places, but I think the story she's about to get into needs words put to it. So at 33 weeks in Christina's third pregnancy, she experienced a stillbirth with her daughter, Rosie. And it was very important to me that we talked about this sensitive topic in a way that she wanted to and that she shared what she wanted to share. So I really don't have anything else to say about it here other than telling you the background of what we're talking about. But now let's get back into the interview and hear from Christina. In 2018, you had your first daughter,
Mhm.
Carmela. Beautiful name.
Thank you.
In 2020, you got pregnant again, second time,
Mhm.
and around 11 weeks,
Mhm.
you miscarried.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about this time in your life and about how pretty quickly into that process, which, firstly, I'm very sorry that you had to go through,
Thank you.
you were able to sort of apply the lens of, okay, 1 in 4 women miscarry.
Yeah.
And I know you were just about to announce the birth. You had already taken your announcement photo. But aside from that, it seems like your thoughts around that were as good as a person could
Yeah.
handle a situation like that. Is that how you still reflect on that experience?
Yeah, and I don't want to take credit for that because I had never been through a miscarriage before, but that's the moment where I started sharing about it online, and like a lot of people got me through that. So like mothers that went through it before made me feel that way about it. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't like
Mhm.
my family and friends were very supportive and there for me, but it was all the moms online and like moms I didn't even know, like people I didn't even know, but moms that had come who had been through it who were passing down hope to me. So like I think that's why I also was like, okay, I'm just going to keep, keep going, keep moving forward because so many women, were really encouraging, and that I think is so important that we're all there for each other like that. But that was like my first time experiencing like the greatest side of social media ever, where like I was like alone in the hospital getting a DNC, and like I'm reading everybody's comments online and they really were making me feel better.
Yeah, there are definitely major pros of social media when you're going through something you've never been through and there's a whole community out there and you feel part of a
Yeah, I got
collective.
carried through it. I really got carried through that.
Then you get pregnant again, and this time you're farther along in the pregnancy. You have your
Yeah,
nursery, you have your name picked out, you have an older sibling, Carmela, waiting at home for the second baby, for this third baby.
sure.
The next part of the story is highly traumatic,
Mhm.
sensitive content. So, what, if anything, do you want to share about this experience?
Well, it's a lot of things. I lost Rosie I was 8.5 months pregnant, and she she came into our lives still as a force because of what came later. At the time, it was absolutely tragic and heartbreaking. I will also say everyone had a terrible 2020. Like it was the middle of the pandemic. Like it felt like a really weird moment in time for the whole world, but we were having our own sort of grief moment by losing her. But in so many ways, I have taken what happened. One, it saved me, Carmela, and Paul's life because we realized our house was filled with mold and we had to leave because I was like I had mold poisoning when this all happened, and I
Mm.
didn't know, but we were stuck in the house for 168 days because of the pandemic. And so there's so many layers to this. So I took Paul and Carmela and we moved to LA, and we never went back to that house because we found out that it was like it was not safe. And then I was still not convinced that something else wasn't wrong because of losing my second pregnancy at 11 weeks is more common, but obviously losing Rosie was not common at all. And I did all the tests on her and everyone said everything came back normal, and I was like I refuse to believe that. Like I refuse. So then I went on my own investigation as a person and like it found out that I had antiphospholipid syndrome, which is a blood clotting thing, a disorder that you only get tested for if you've had 2 or more losses. And then that changed my whole life because I was like, whoa, 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 that needs to never happen ever again. Like what? Like that doesn't make any sense because I
What
had
is what is that illness and how is it related to loss?
So it causes blood clots. So at some point in the 11-week pregnancy, I must have gotten a blood clot and lost that pregnancy and didn't know because no one tested me for it.
Mhm.
So then it means whenever I'm pregnant, my blood is very sticky. And so at some point with Rosie, the same thing happened and I lost her due to a blood clot. But no one tested me for it, or no one, even found it afterwards until I found it by getting this test, which explained it. But the most heartbreaking part of it is it's so simple to just take blood thinner and then you don't lose your baby. So the
Oh,
treatment is so simple. So all women should be tested for this just so they can take blood thinner just in case, or they can know going into it, and then they can have a baby who's alive. Like, it makes such sense to me now, having been through it, but no one stopped to ask these questions or to talk about it out loud until now. Like, I don't even think it was an oversight on purpose. I just think this was happening to some women, and then now it happens to more women, and it's just like gestational diabetes, where at some point in the 90s they gave that test to every single person. It became universal in 1991 or something because obesity became a thing. Before that it wasn't, and then all of a sudden it was, and then they tested everyone. So now I'm going, okay, well, something's going on in our world, our food, our environment, our lives, where we're all getting stickier blood, because this ends up being, all the research I do, it says it's 55% of multiple miscarriages are due to this blood clotting disease. So it's like, why is everyone
wow.
not being tested for this? But again, it was like I had to sort of get all this information together to look at it and say, oh wow, this is a thing. I think it was, everyone was missing it, and because it was just happening, and no one was stopping. And then all of a sudden Rosie died, and the way for me to get through grief, because everyone's different, but like the way I needed to get through my grief was to focus on something. And then once I realized this was a thing that needed to happen, I like spent all my time and energy healing and like doing this for her, in honor of her. And so I was able to really heal some parts of me that were really broken, that I'm not sure how else I would have healed if I didn't have this. I mean, I made a lullaby album for Rosie. I talk about her all the time. I feel like anyone who's, goes through any kind of grief, like you never want to forget the person, whether, they lived on earth long or not. So I honored her as part of our family. I did a lot of therapy. Carmela did therapy. My husband and I did therapy. Like, we did all the things to, like, get through the physical grief, the emotional grief, the spiritual grief. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to give it a purpose, and I'm going to make Rosie's life important, and save millions of babies forever. So that's the only like silver lining, beautiful thing that came from this, because what really happens to a lot of people, and they don't get to do this. It's just like, it's the most heartbreaking thing a mom could ever go through. It's the most unnatural thing. It is the thing that we all fear the second we get pregnant. It
Mm.
happened. I lived through it. It happened to me, happened to my family. It was absolutely awful. We got through it. We turned it into service.
Your story is crushing as a mom, and also I'm sure anyone listening that's not a mom, it's
Yeah.
really the worst case scenario,
Yeah.
scariest, saddest situation.
Mhm.
I heard in an interview you sharing the incredibly beautiful way that your daughter Carmela
Oh yeah.
reacted to the news, and I would love for my audience to hear that.
It's so interesting because, the story keeps going, and it has a very happy ending, because we have Pixie, my double rainbow magic miracle baby. But so many people ask me, how did you have the strength to try again? How did you have the strength to get through that pregnancy? How did you even want to do it again? And my answers are always Carmela. So what happened was, when we got home from the hospital without Rosie, because she knew we went to the hospital, and Carm's very, very deep and smart. So like, even though she was almost 3, she was very verbal. She knew what was going on. And so Paul and I, my husband, we cared very much how we were going to tell her this, because we knew it was going to be very heartbreaking, and we were also about to tell it to, almost 3-year-old about death. Like, I mean, it was so heavy. It was so heavy. So what did I do, which I always do, is I asked for help. I reached out to Big Little Feelings, Janet Lansbury, like the best toddler mom specialists of all time. They actually wrote me back on Instagram, because I remember I was like, hey, I just went through this thing and I'm so afraid, I don't know what to tell my daughter. So I did ask for help. They wrote me a script, because I was like, I don't know what to say. And so Paul and I practiced this, and we went home and we sat down with Carmela, and this moment was so profound, where we're looking at her, and I said just what everyone told me to say. We were very strong. We were keeping it together. And I just said, Carmela, I said, you're here and your body works. Daddy's here and his body works. Mommy is here and my body works. The baby came and her body didn't work and she died. And then I said nothing. And we're like hanging on that, because I'm like, how is this going to land? And Carmela like hears it. She's like playing, and like I'm watching her process this, and we're not breathing for sure. And Carmela just looks at us in the eye and just says, "Don't worry, mom and dad. You'll have another baby and her body will work."
Oh,
Now, I don't know
wow.
how a 2.5-year-old can think that, can grasp that. She comforted us in that moment. And honestly, like, and then we broke down and we cried and we held each other. And I told her about, I answered every question she had from that day on. Like, I didn't overshare until she brought something up, and then I'd share it. I did everything they told me to do. And it was we were all bonding in a different way, the three of us, but Carmela is a huge part of it because she was there, she understood, and then she gave me the strength to do it. She was like, and every time I was like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I was like, Carmela said I will, Carmela said I
Mhm.
will, you know what I mean? Like, and I can't wait till one day for me to tell her that. Like, I've never brought that back up to Carm because she's only 6. Sorry, she's 7. Oh my God, she'd kill me if she knew. She's 7 now, and talks about Rosie all the time and has a full understanding of what happened. But I don't want to put on her how much she did for us until she's older and she can like really handle that. But I can't wait to tell her that she
Yeah.
was the reason that Paul and I got through the grief, got through, healing, doing all these things to heal my body, to get pregnant again, to then have Pixie. So the day Pixie arrived, I remember thinking like, I'm just gonna give her to Carmela and like take a vacation.
Yes. You're like, Carmela's got her.
Yeah, I did it. It took 3 years to do this. Just,
Oh.
it's for you. Bye. I'm out. But it was all for her, and what a special spirit she is that she
Yeah.
carried us through.
Speaking of spiritual grief,
Hmm.
I feel like when a person passes, everyone has their own internal belief system
Yeah.
or almost their own lens that they apply to the situation that is useful for them, whether that's religious or, I don't know, someone might say they're in a better place and that makes them feel better. Someone might say they're with Jesus, with God.
Hmm.
What do you think? Or where does your brain take you when you think about the spirituality of it all?
So it's so interesting. I still struggle with this on a daily basis. I do and I don't. I feel like there's a knowing. There's a knowing in my body, but there's also just this mystery and this curiosity that we all have as humans. And there is also the very, very strong religious people in my life that try to make me feel a certain way. So I have a interesting relationship with this because I also don't tell anyone that they're wrong. So I feel like, some people are very religious and think that everyone else is wrong and they're right. That's not how I feel at all. My mom thinks that Rosie's with the Lord. She's very Catholic. Great. She prays to her every day. Like, great. Like, I just think like whatever version of Rosie is for you in your life, wonderful. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong because you then can't tell me I'm wrong. So that sets me up to feel safe enough to have my own belief system, and also for my children to have, things I tell them that I feel honest, where I don't like lying. I don't even like pretending. So I share all the time about how I feel about Rosie with my truth, with my inner truth. And so what that looks like for me has evolved. I will say in the very beginning, I was in denial. I just like hated the whole thing. I didn't want to even think about her as a body. I remember I didn't want to see her sonograms because like losing her was too hard. Like we met her and held her and said goodbye to her, but that memory was too hard. And I mean, there was so much I would rather imagine her as a spirit. I would rather imagine her as an angel, as a butterfly, as a tree. I mean, I went through so many versions. And what's funny enough is I have a tree for her. I have a, wind chime for her. I have her ashes in, that from her cremation. I have different versions of her in my life. I have her lullaby album. I have her brain cells, we now know, are in my body. We now know that all of our children's brain cells are in our brain.
Mm.
So like I actually feel her because like she exists in me. And so there's like so many beautiful ways to imagine her. But for me, it's not religious at all. I've never felt comfortable or comforted by the idea of her being somewhere else in a different realm, in a different land, in heaven, and in wherever. I like, that doesn't make me feel better. So I like to think that she is just in my body, in my breath, in my heart, in our family, in real time, in here with us. Carmela said that Rosie gave us Pixie, so she exists. She's here. And to me, it doesn't have to be definitive. It doesn't have to, it's not a gravestone. I don't appreciate necessarily our culture and the way we do death. I don't want her body to be in the ground in Philadelphia with my grandparents. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd rather
Hmm.
her be in our living room, and I have little Mickey ears on her. Because she has her own Mickey ears from Disneyland,
I
that say
love that.
Rosie. So, like, that's just what it looks like for me. I wonder if it's going to evolve. I know my Catholic in-laws and my Catholic parents would love to believe that I'm going to get eventually to a place where I look at it through the lens of the Lord. I just don't know. That's just not where I'm at. I went through too much. When you hold your child who has died, it is very, very hard to stay in your belief system that you had growing up, whatever it is, whatever religion you are. I don't know many people who could go through that experience and keep their faith just as it was. I think it
Hmm.
has to change. I think it has to grow. You're faced with this mortality that you should not be faced with. And it's hard for my husband and I to think, well, God is good and everything is fine. And also this happened. Do you know what I mean? So, like,
Yep.
we're figuring out a way to have it make sense for us where we're not offending other people, we're not lying to our kids, and we're also comforting our own hearts, and for us it's that her spirit is alive and well in our lives.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
Being a public figure who gets asked to come on interviews,
Mhm.
how do you feel being asked about this?
I feel really grateful because I don't get to talk about it that much. I feel like most people don't want to talk about it. Like, I don't get
Mm.
asked often, and, like, I also don't talk about it too much in my personal life with many people because I have this, like, and this could be just my stubbornness, I will say, like, I'm a bit stubborn about, if you're not married, if you're not a parent, and if you haven't had loss, I don't want to have a deep conversation about this stuff
Hmm.
with someone. Meaning, because I feel like everyone who doesn't have those things is trying to convince me of something they don't understand. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not
Hmm.
a disrespectful thing. It's just like, if you're not a parent, you can't really connect with someone who's not, who, like, doesn't know what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night every 3 hours. Like,
Hmm.
there's just little nuances that come from, like, or if you don't have a spouse and you don't know how hard it is to be married, like, please don't talk to me about marriage. You know what I mean? You're in love with your boyfriend, like, get out of here. Do you know what I mean? Like, cool, talk to me in 7 years. But again, I don't want that to sound pretentious, and, like, I don't want to sound like a dick. It's not something that's, I don't want to open up that whole thing with someone
Hmm.
who doesn't, like, who can't hold the space with me with their own experience. So I don't talk about it a ton. I feel like, a lot of times I'm telling my story and, like, I'm delivering a message of hope, but, like, I wonder if some people notice that I don't talk a lot about God because I don't that's not my angle. That's
Hmm.
not my experience. That's not my I'm very still angry, I think, about the idea of prayer because so many people prayed for Rosie. So for me, I get triggered pretty deeply when someone's like, I'm praying for you. And in my mind, I'm like, don't, because it didn't work.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I wonder
Mm.
how that's going to evolve over my lifetime. Like, I wonder if because I've been sober for so long. Like, I had an idea of God, and I had a system where I did pray before every show. I was praying. Like, I had a version of me that was very spiritually connected to something. And then when Rosie died, I don't have that anymore. So I wonder if it's, like, has to evolve and I have to find it again. Like, I wonder if that's part of my journey. But, like, if someone could put themselves in my shoes, and, like, my mom wrote to me that every single nun in America was praying for Rosie before she died, because we found out that there was, like, a complication right before she died. And so she was alive for 10 days where people were praying for her. And, like, how do you then still appreciate prayer if it didn't work
Yeah.
that much? Like, no, she didn't deserve to die. And our family didn't deserve to go through that and all those things. And I understand people have opinions where they then think it's still God's plan and all that. And what's interesting is I still almost agree that then I, am now being of service with Rosie's story and her experience, and her life was exactly as long as it needed to be to get me to do this.
Mhm.
So I'm delicate and I'm dancing around the same probably concepts and theories and things, but I'm very raw. I'm very raw about it. It's only been 4 years, but I still feel a certain type of way, and I'm also at the same time very open to evolving. I feel like if something comes my way or someone says something that like really strikes me and makes me curious, I'll definitely be open to hearing. But I have that requirement to someone who's like had deep grief, that they're
Yeah.
the people I listen to the most.
We have an episode of this podcast where we have audience callers send voicemails in, and it's just a string of people sending in what's going on in their lives and what's happening. And there was one voicemail that came in a couple weeks ago. This woman was sharing how her mom passed, and then shortly after her mom passed, she got pregnant and became a mom herself. And she was saying how it makes her so sad that she can't, no one really asks her about her mom because
Mm,
they don't want to bring back, no one knows how to address it or talk about it. And in this case, with what happened to you, people think it's so sensitive. She probably doesn't want to talk about that. And so no one talks about the death of her mom. And now that there's this positive thing that's come after it, it's like everyone's harping on that. But she still is
mm,
thinking about her mom and wants to talk about her mom. And
yeah.
she still wants to go there. And so I feel like that's partially what you're saying when you say, I actually don't talk about this a lot. It's easy from an outsider standpoint to think this is probably what she's asked about all the time, especially if, I've seen one or two social media posts where you're talking about it. So it
Mhm.
seems like it's very top of mind, but it's interesting to hear that actually in your day-to-day life,
Yeah.
it's not being brought up, but it's maybe cathartic for you to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for noticing that. Thank you for, it's interesting now that it's something it's not that I'm comfortable talking about it. I'm just very open and honest about my experience. But I will say there's like surface stuff, and then there's questions that some people just don't ask, and you're right. I do like talking about it because I'm experiencing it in real time. So if I
Mhm.
said like, no, this is how I think and I'm never going to change my mind, like, well, then yeah, that would be different. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm curious. I'm saying I'm it's painful. It's still painful. It's still raw, but am I open to it? Yeah. Like, so that's me in real time. I just appreciate, when people reach out to me that have had a similar experience. And I think that's important. But at the same time, it's still nice to talk about the fact that like I kind of don't know. I also try to teach my girls that, like, at the end of the day, like, we all don't know. Like, we just know what we feel, we know what we see, we know what we believe, but like, so Carmela all the time says that she's going to hang out with Rosie in her next life. She's hooked on the idea that like we do this multiple times, and that next life, like, she'll know Rosie, and that she knew Rosie before in her old life, and she'll talk about like, back in the 70s, and I'm like, who are you? But I'm like, who am I to tell her she's wrong?
Honestly, maybe she had some experience that we don't know about.
Exactly. So, like, I
Yeah.
do like the openness of it all versus that, no, it is this and it is only this, and, like, that's how I grew up, and I didn't like it.
Yep. So your career has just taken such an interesting arc going from songwriter to singer, pop star, motherhood,
Yeah,
mom, changes everything. And
yeah.
now we're at the author mark.
Mhm.
And we were actually at the author mark a little while back as well.
Sure.
Now we've got this new children's book, A Thousand Years.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the moment that that song transformed in your mind from being a love song to, wait, this is defining motherhood?
Yes. So I can't take any credit for this because the the listeners and the fans of this song and the people who chose to have 1,000 years be a part of their wedding, their most powerful loving moments of their lives, they are responsible fully for the evolution of this song, because to me it's a totally abstract like thing I created in 2011. But what has happened since is gone from, the Twilight song, the Twilight swan song of the whole franchise and for all the fans, to then all those people getting married and making it their wedding song, to then
Yep.
all those people having babies and I sang a lullaby version of it on Songs for Carmela, my first lullaby album. That was the whole point. I was like, I think I should sing this like really pretty because, everyone who got married to it's now having babies because I'm now having babies. Like it was in real time. Like I am one of those elder millennials that is like, I mean, I did not walk down the aisle to my own song, but like, like I'm in the
That was
era.
a missed opportunity, Christina.
I know.
You could have at least done an instrumental.
That would be so funny if I did. Oh my God. I never thought about that. But anyway, but I am that era and those are my people. And so if you got married between, 2011 and 2025, there's a high chance that it's in your wedding somewhere. And then so it would mean something more to you as a parent to sing that to your child or to play my lullabies. And then it just made so much sense to do a picture book next because I'm literally also in that season where I'm reading books to my kids. I now have Pixie who's 2.5 and like, we read books every night. So it just made sense to me that it should be because it went from the love of two vampires to the love of two people to the love of a parent to their child. It just made like so much sense that this would be the next thing we do. I have been working on it a long time, so long that the little girl in the illustration was the same age as Carmela when we started, and now is the same age as Pixie. So it's
Aw.
kind of cute because Pixie thinks it's her in the book, but it's really Carm. But whatever. Well, my girls are like copy and paste, like they literally look identical. So it's like could be either one of them. But we've been working on it for so many years, and the illustrator Joy, she was a fan of my music. She knew Carmela through social media, my posts. She knew like she drew the book in a way that I could only dream of it being. She just felt a connection to me again as a fan of the music. Like it just feels so warm and fuzzy to me. Like everybody who's a part of this whole thing feels like I feel so connected to. And because motherhood is so vulnerable and, it's like, gosh, like I just feel so honored to get to be a book in the library of, what people read to their kids at night, and so yeah, I'm super excited. It's like I've been working on it so long. It feels like it's crazy that it's just now happening. I can't wait for everyone to experience it in the mother or in the parental love sort of way. Like loving someone forever is basically just what the song means. So it's perfect for a parent to read to their kid. And it's Carmela and her little bunny and me, and the mom's very like modern. Like I made sure that she was very relatable. She's got tattoos. She's not super skinny. She's like, a jeans and a t-shirt and like, it just like looks like our generation. And so I care very much, how it all came together, and I'm so excited to share it with the world.
I can't wait to read it to my kids. And
Thank you.
I also have just decided I'm going to gift it to my best friend who, wait, it's hitting me. Well, first of all, the reason I have to gift it to her is because we had this whole conversation dating back to college that she was going to make 1,000 Years her wedding song. She's also now a mom, and her name is Rose. And this just hit me. So Rose, if you're listening, you're getting this book in the mail. When does it come out?
It comes out April 1st.
Okay.
It's up for pre-order right now. I don't know when you're going to post this, but it's up for pre-order and then comes out April 1st. And I hope it's the beginning of a couple. Like I have more ideas, and I just feel so grateful to be in this space because it's so authentic to me right now that like I hope I stay in it for a while. Like I love the lullabies. I want to do maybe a couple books. I have some ideas. I'm working on music and lyrics for a kids show. So there's like a whole kids space that I'm now in that I absolutely love because I love being a mom.
Can we just circle back to this career trajectory in terms of having this peak moment, which I don't know if you think of 2009, 10, 11 as your musical peak,
Sure.
or how you view that time. But I was thinking about this in relation to myself recently because I kind of started my video content career as a YouTuber, the face of Refinery 29's YouTube channel for about 5 years.
Okay.
And then in 2019, I signed with a talent agency, went off on my own, and I was like, I'm going to do this content creation thing, YouTube, TikTok, work with brands, signed with an agent, no longer working at a big media company.
Yeah.
I've had, more monetary success being off on my own, but was definitely in front of more eyeballs at various times throughout my career when I was on Refinery 29's platforms because they had millions of subscribers, and now I'm off doing it on my own.
Sure.
And I catch myself trying to orient, where am I in the scope of the roller coaster of my career? Have I peaked already and now I'm just on the way down?
Mm-hmm.
Is there another peak coming up soon? is this an up and down roller coaster ride, or does everyone just get one shot and then you're
Interesting.
never like that again?
Yeah,
And as someone who really, my example is micro compared to being on So You Think You Can Dance, blowing up, getting signed, you're a global name. And now your career is so different. You're just in such a different stage. You
mhm,
are spiritually and physically in every way a different person.
sure.
But how do you think about your growth and your trajectory and where you are in that roller coaster ride of life?
I think about it often too. I feel like I'm just an overthinker in general. And sometimes I think, like, is my greatest success behind me instead of in front of me? And then, my idea of what success is did change because I remember being on tour with Ed Sheeran, playing Gillette Stadium. It was 80,000 people, and I'm playing, on stage, and everyone's screaming my name and like has my hair cut or like whatever these like what would be markers for people of like I made it, I made
Yep.
it. And as you, even what I said, earlier we were talking about like when the money hit my bank account and I just still was like I'm going to do laser hair removal because I'm an insecure 23-year-old girl. I feel like if I'm being really honest, like my idea of success changed so much that like this might be my favorite era that I'm in right now, and it's not my most relevant, my most successful, my most famous. I heard my daughter say the funniest thing the other day. This is so humbling. She was like, because she's learning sort of like, what I do in my place in the world and how a lot of people will be like, oh my God, I love your mom's music or whatever. And so Carmela said to her friend, I heard her, she wasn't saying it to me. She was like, yeah, well, my mom's music's really famous, but like not so much her body. I was like, oh, what? And then I was like, wait, that's my fault because I make it so like no big deal that I'm just like, yeah, my songs are really famous, but like, I'm not like on tour anymore and I'm not like doing that, living that lifestyle. And
Right.
I've tried to make it so cool that now I'm not cool or so uncool that I'm not cool at all. But I also am like, oh, I love that. I love that my music is this thing and that I get to have this life with my girls. And so I don't know. I go back and forth thinking like, oh, I had the best version of it back then. And then I think like I was not really happy back then. Like I was scared. I was uncomfortable. I was, trying to hold on to sobriety. I was like, touring around the world, missing my mom and dad. I was like really, like there were highs, definitely, but like now my highs are so different. Like,
Mhm.
so I've evolved so much as a person that I guess I don't have a ruler. I'm not measuring because my idea of success has changed. And then I think maybe that's the key. Maybe that's the key to never feel like you peak is to just keep dreaming. So for me, my new North Star is like, this kid show. And then it's like, I want to make a Disney movie and I want to do, like, so as long as I keep moving the goalpost, I wonder
Yep.
if I'll ever feel like I peaked. I think I honor 23-year-old me with combat boots and a blonde streak. And like, I love her and she's a version of me, but she's not my identity, And so I think the best way that I can keep moving forward is to keep moving forward, evolving,
Yep.
growing, and then like making up new dreams. And I think that's maybe going to be the only way to not feel like, oh, it's over.
I really love the idea of just obviously honoring the past,
Yeah,
but looking forward. Because if you're only looking forward and if you're only dreaming up your next creative project, whatever's aligned with you in the moment, then you don't even know how that stacks up to what your past was like. You're not looking back. You're not seeing, am I higher than I was before? Am I lower? You're just
sure.
where you are now.
Yeah, I think that's the key to not also be happy or sad about it. Like to because that's too much for like my brain. Like I don't want to judge it and think I'm doing better or I'm doing worse. Like I'm just doing what I'm doing right now and that works for me mentally because I care very much about my mental health. And yeah, like I said, I honor her. Like that was the highest moment in my career as a recording artist. Now I'm a children's author. Like I do try to change the title. So like you being at, Refinery 29, like that was your version of that, but now you're doing so much more. Do you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
you have so much more depth to you as a person because you're a mom and because you've done, and like so you can't compare. It's like apples and oranges, it's like
Yep.
so I think it's like also smart for us as women and moms to not get stuck in the I was more successful when I was young. Cause like screw that. Men get famous at 50. Do you know what I mean? So like
Yep.
we get the chance to like keep growing and telling that narrative that like, oh, it's just beginning. This new chapter is just beginning, but it's definitely just like another chapter of the same book. it's not better or worse. That's how I try to look at it.
It also very much feels like another chapter for me connecting with you, by the way, because I really feel like you were a major part of my 2010 era.
Thank you.
And then if I'm being completely honest, I didn't follow you on Instagram.
Yeah.
I had your music in my, Spotify, but
Yeah.
didn't know you were a mom. Hadn't seen articles about your journey. And then you popped up, started following me on Instagram. Do you even
Yeah.
remember what brought you to my account?
Yeah, it was you. It was a video you just posted. It was so funny of you in the crib. What was
Oh,
the you were
it was
doing?
the Devil Wears Prada,
Oh, where's Prada? I was dying because
or
like
the Devil Wears Pull-Ups, as I
yes,
wrote.
yes, exactly. So this is what's so weird about social media. Like you were just in my algorithm. And so I watched it, I followed you, and I feel like I've definitely seen you around before. Maybe even from Refinery 29. I did so much stuff with them back in the day, and
Mhm.
so I don't know. I feel like once I started, I was like, oh yeah, like I've seen you before. So I've seen your content, or I've seen you. Who knows? I might have even seen you in real life, and but like I recognized you, and I was like, oh yeah. And so then I just followed you because I also love just following moms. I'm just like so interested in. So that was very funny. So that's what got me in, and then I was like, oh yeah, yeah. And then I do remember seeing some of your stuff before, but it's the same thing for me. It's like that. It just this is what's so wild about today because it's like it feels so right to know you like oh yeah like we should know each other, we're the same people, and then it's like but not actually. Do you know what I mean? Like we didn't actually know each other till today.
Yes, I saw your name come in and immediately went to your profile and thought, "She's a mom now? She's got a children's book, and this is a song," these
Yeah,
songs they're so nostalgic for me, and so it really just feels like fate,
yeah,
weaving my past back to us both now in this
yeah.
new stage of our lives together, and
How
I'm
cool.
so grateful
Yeah.
that you followed me, and I'm grateful we started talking, and thank you so much for this hour and a half that you've
Oh
given
my
us on the
gosh,
real
thank
stuff.
you. I loved it. What a great conversation. Honestly, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Real Stuff podcast. If you're liking the show, please head over to Apple or Spotify and leave the show a written review. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment down below and join in the conversation. And if you're feeling called to be a guest on the show, visit luciefink.com/apply and tell us your story. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your attention with us, and we will see you next time on the Real Stuff podcast.
Please note that this episode may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products and services. Individuals on the show may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to in this episode.